Hello, welcome to another episode of Awakening with Soulspirational. I'm Tish, and in this episode I want to talk about the book of Ecclesiastes. So I'm going to just read some passages from it. I know it's a little outside of what I normally do, but here's the context to it. So since last spring, so about the last year, I have lost quite a few people and some pets. So some that have passed on that have really touched me. And I found that reading Ecclesiastes just kind of reminds me of enjoying life while we're here. Because we don't know how long we have, right? So to just kind of enjoy life while it's here. And obviously I can't read the whole book of Ecclesiastes in this half an hour. But there are some points that I just want to kind of just to read and go through here. I will also say, for those of you that are familiar with Ecclesiastes, there are some points in here where it says the fear of God, and I just can't say that. There's nothing about God to me that is fearful, so in those points I will be interjecting with the love of God. So some of you may not appreciate me doing that. I'm just being honest with you up front. So let's start if we shall. So again, Ecclesiastes. So the author, Solomon of Jerusalem, King David's son, the preacher. So in my opinion, nothing is worthwhile. Everything is futile. For what does a man get for all of his hard work? Generations come and go, but it makes no difference. The sun rises and sets and hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and north here and there, twisting back and forth, getting nowhere. The rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. And the water returns again to the rivers and flows again to the sea. Everything is unutterably weary and tiresome. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. History merely repeats itself. Nothing is truly new. And it has all been done or said before. What can you point to that is new? How do you know it didn't exist long ages ago? We don't remember what happened in those former times. And in the future generations, no one will remember what we have done back here. Actually, I'm going to repeat that. We don't remember what happened in those former times. And in the future generations, no one will remember what we have done back here. I, the preacher, was king of Israel, living in Jerusalem. And I applied myself to search for understanding about everything in the universe. I discovered that the lot of man, which God has dealt to him, is not a happy one. It is all foolishness, chasing the wind. What is wrong cannot be righted. It is water over the dam, and there is no use thinking of what might have been. I said to myself, look, I am better educated than any of the kings before me in Jerusalem. I have greater wisdom and knowledge. So I worked hard to be wise instead of foolish. But now I realize that even this was like chasing the wind. For the more my wisdom, the more my grief. To increase knowledge only increases distress. I said to myself, come now, be merry, enjoy yourself to the full. But I found that this too was futile. For it is silly to be laughing all the time. What good does it do? So after a lot of thinking, I decided to try the road of drink, while still holding steadily to my course of seeking wisdom. Next, I changed my course again and followed the path of folly, so that I could experience the only happiness most men have throughout their lives. Then I tried to find fulfillment by inaugurating a great public works program, homes, vineyards, gardens, parks and orchards for myself, and reservoirs to hold the water to irrigate my plantations. Next, I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born within my household. I also bred great herds and flocks, more than any of the kings before me. I collected silver and gold as taxes from many kings and provinces. In the cultural arts, I organized men's and women's choirs and orchestras. And then there were my many beautiful concubines. So I became greater than any of these kings in Jerusalem before me. And with it all, I remained clear-eyed, so that I could evaluate all of these things. Anything I wanted, I took, and did not restrain myself from any joy. I even found great pleasure in hard work. This pleasure was indeed my only reward for all my labors. But as I looked at everything I had tried, it was all so useless, a chasing of the wind. And there was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. Now I began a study of the comparative virtues of wisdom and folly. And anyone else would have come to the same conclusion I did, that wisdom is of more value than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise man sees, while the fool is blind. And yet I noticed that there was one thing that happened to wise and foolish alike. Just as the fool will die, so will I. So of what value is all my wisdom? Then I realized that even wisdom is futile. For the wise and the fool both die. And in the days to come, both will be long forgotten. So now I hate life because it is all so irrational. All is foolishness, chasing the wind. I am disgusted about this, that I must leave the fruits of all my hard work to others. And who can tell whether my son will be a wise man or a fool? And yet all I have will be given to him. How discouraging. So I turned in despair from hard work as the answer to my search for satisfaction. For though I spend my life searching for wisdom, knowledge, and skill, I must leave all of it to someone who hasn't done a day's work in his life. He inherits all of my efforts free of charge. This is not only foolish, but unfair. So what does a man get for all this hard work? Days full of sorrow and grief and restless, bitter nights. It is all utterly ridiculous. So I decided that there was nothing better for a man to do than to enjoy his food and drink and his job. Then I realized that even this pleasure is from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy apart from him? For God gives those who please him wisdom, knowledge, and joy. I'm going to go on to chapter 3 here. And for those of you that may not be familiar with Ecclesiastes, you may remember this even in song form. So there is a right time for everything. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to harvest. A time to kill, a time to heal. A time to destroy, a time to rebuild, a time to cry, a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time for scattering stones, a time for gathering stones, a time to hug, a time not to hug, a time to find, a time to lose, a time for keeping, a time for throwing away, a time to tear, a time to repair, a time to be quiet, a time to speak up, a time for loving, a time for hating, a time for war, a time for peace. What does one really get from hard work? I thought about this in connection with all the various kinds of work God has given to mankind. Everything is appropriate in its own time. But though God has planted eternity in the hearts of men, even so, man cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I conclude that first, there is nothing better for a man than to be happy and to enjoy himself as long as he can. And second, that he should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of his labor, for these are gifts from God. And I know this, that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added or taken from it. God's perfect purpose in this is that man should love the all-powerful God. Whatever is has been long ago, and whatever is going to be has been before. God brings to pass again what was in the distant past and disappeared. Moreover, I notice that throughout the earth, justice is giving way to crime, and even the police courts are corrupt. I said to myself, in due season, God will judge everything man does, both good and bad. And then I realized that God is letting the world go on its sinful way so that he can test mankind, and so that men themselves will see that they are no better than beasts. For men and animals both breathe the same air, and both die. So mankind has no real advantage over the beast. What an absurdity. All go to one place, the dust from which they came and to which they must return. For who can prove that the spirit of man goes upward and that the spirit of animals goes downward into dust? So I saw that there was nothing better for men than that they should be happy in their work. For that is what they are here for, and no one can bring them back to life to enjoy what will be in the future. So let them enjoy now. Next, chapter 4. Next, I observed the oppression and sadness throughout the earth, the tears of the oppressed, and no one helping them. While on the side of their oppressors were powerful allies. So I felt that the dead were better off than the living. And most fortunate of all of those are those who have never been born and have never seen all the evil and the crime throughout the earth. Then I observed that the basic motive for success is the driving force of envy and jealousy. But this too is foolishness, chasing the wind. The fool won't work and almost starves, but feels that it is better to be lazy and barely get by than to work hard, when in the long run, it is also futile. I also observed another piece of foolishness around the earth. This is the case of a man who is quite alone, without a son or a brother. Yet he works hard to keep gaining more riches, and to whom who will he leave it all? And why is he giving up so much now? It is also pointless and depressing. Two can accomplish more than twice as much as one. Two can accomplish more than twice as much as one, for the results can be much better. If one falls, the other pulls him up. But if a man falls when he is alone, he is in trouble. Also, on a cold night, two under the same blanket gain warmth from each other. But how can one be warm alone? And one standing alone can be attacked and defeated. But two can stand back to back and conquer. Three is even better, for a triple-braided cord is not easily broken. It is better to be poor but wise youth than to be an old and foolish king who refuses all advice. Such a lad could come from prison and succeed. He might even become king, though born in poverty. Everyone is eager to help a youth like that, even to help him usurp the throne. He can become the leader of millions of people and be very popular. But then the younger generation grows up around him and rejects him. So again, it is all foolishness, chasing the wind. Chapter 5, as you enter the temple, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Don't be a fool who doesn't even realize it is sinful to make rash promises to God, for he is in heaven, and you are only here on earth. So let your words be few. Just as being too busy gives you nightmares, so being a fool makes you a blabbermouth. So when you talk to God and vow to him that you will do something, don't delay in doing it. For God has no pleasure in fools. Keep your promise to him. It is far better not to say you'll do something than to say you will and then not do it. In that case, your mouth is making you sin. Don't try to defend yourself by telling the messenger from God that it was all a mistake to make the vow. That would make God very angry. Dreaming instead of doing is foolishness. If you see I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. If you see some poor man being oppressed by the rich with miscarriage of justice anywhere throughout the land, don't be surprised. For every official is under orders from higher up, and the higher officials look up to their superiors. And so the matter is lost in red tape and bureaucracy. And over them all is the king. Oh, for a king who is devoted to his country. Only he can bring order from this chaos. He who loves money shall never have enough. The foolishness of thinking that wealth brings happiness. The more you have, the more you spend right up to the limits of your income. So what is the advantage of wealth? Except perhaps to watch it as it runs through your fingers. The man who works hard sleeps well, whether he eats little or much. But the rich must worry and suffer insomnia. There is another serious problem I have seen everywhere. Savings are put into risky investments that turn sour, and soon there is nothing left to pass on to one's son. The man who speculates is soon back to where he began, with nothing. This, as I said, is a very serious problem, for all this hard work has been for nothing. He has been working for the wind. It is all swept away. All the rest of his life is under a cloud, gloomy, discouraged, frustrated, and angry. Well, one thing at least is good. It is for a man to eat well, drink a good glass of wine, accept his position in life, and enjoy his work, whatever his job may be, for however long the Lord may let him live. And of course, it is very good if a man has received wealth from the Lord and the good health to enjoy it. To enjoy your work and to accept your lot in life, that is indeed a gift from God. The person who does that will not need to look back with sorrow on his past, for God gives him joy. Let me see here, because I'm going to close this down pretty soon. I'm going to jump to chapter 7. A good reputation is more valuable than the most expensive perfume. The day one dies is better than the day he is born. It is better to spend your time at funerals than at festivals. For you are going to die, and it is a good thing to think about it while there is still time. I'm going to just repeat that. For you are going to die, and it is a good thing to think about while there is still time. Sorrow is better than laughter, for sadness has a refining influence on us. Yes, a wise man thinks much of death, while the fool thinks only of having a good time now. It is better to be criticized by a wise man than to be praised by a fool, for a fool's compliment is as quickly gone as a paper in fire, and it is silly to be impressed by it. The wise man is turned into a fool by a bribe. It destroys his understanding. Finishing is better than starting. Patience better than pride. Don't be quick-tempered. That is being a fool. Don't long for the good old days, for you don't know whether they were any better than these. To be wise is as good as being rich. In fact, it is better. You can get anything by either wisdom or money, but being wise has many advantages. See the way God does. See the way God does things and fall into line. Don't fight the facts of nature. Enjoy prosperity whenever you can. And when hard times strike, realize that God gives one as well as the other, so that everyone will realize that nothing is certain in this life. In this silly life, I have seen everything, including the fact that some of the good die young and some of the wicked live on and on. So don't be too good or too wise. Why destroy yourself? On the other hand, don't be too wicked either. Don't be a fool. Why should you die before your time? Tackle every task that comes along. A wise man is stronger than the mayors of 10 big cities. And there is not a single man in all the earth who is always good and never sins. And that one I'm going to repeat again too. So this is chapter 7, verse 19. Because I think I see so many people who sit with this. A wise man is stronger than the mayor of 10 big cities. So verse 20 here. And there is not a single man in all the earth who is always good and never sins. Okay. Don't eavesdrop. You may hear your servant cursing you, for you know how often you yourself curse others. I have tried my best to be wise. I declared I will be wise, but it didn't work. Wisdom is far away and very difficult to find. I searched everywhere, determined to find wisdom in the reason for things, and to prove to myself the wickedness of folly, and that foolishness is madness. So give generously, for your gifts will return to you later. Divide your gifts among many, for in the days ahead you yourself may need much help. When the clouds are heavy, the rains come down. When a tree falls, whether south or north, the die is cast, for there it lies. If you wait for perfect conditions, you will never get anything done. God's ways are as mysterious as the pathway of the wind, and as the manner in which a human spirit is infused into the little body of a baby while it is yet in its mother's womb. Keep on sowing your seed, for you never know which will grow. Perhaps it all will. It is a wonderful thing to be alive. If a person lives to be very old, let him rejoice in every day of life. But let him also remember that eternity is far longer and that everything down here is futile in comparison. Young man, it's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Do all you want to, take in everything, but realize that you must account to God for everything you do. So banish grief and pain, but remember that youth, with a whole life before it, can make serious mistakes. Chapter 12, don't let the excitement of being young cause you to forget about your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before the evil years come, when you'll no longer enjoy living. It will be too late then to try to remember Him, when the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are dim to your old eyes, and there's no silver lining left among your clouds. For there will come a time when your limbs will tremble with age, and your strong legs will become weak, and your teeth will be too few to do their work, and there will be blindness too. Then let your lips be tightly closed while eating, when your teeth are gone. and you will waken at dawn with the first note of the birds. But you yourself will be deaf and tuneless with quavering voice. You will be afraid of heights and of falling. A white-haired, withered old man dragging himself along without sexual desire, standing at death's door and nearing his everlasting home as the mourners go along the streets. Yes, remember your Creator now, while you are young, before the silver cord of life snaps and the golden bowl is broken, and the pitcher is broken at the fountain, and the wheel is broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God, who gave it. All is futile, says the preacher, utterly futile. But then, because the preacher was wise, he went on teaching the people all he knew. He collected proverbs and classified them. For the preacher was not only a wise man, but a good teacher. He not only taught what he knew to the people, but taught them in an interesting manner. The wise men's words are like goads that spur to action. They nail down important truths. Students are wise who master what their teachers tell them. But my son, be warned. There is no end of opinions ready to be expressed. Studying them can go on forever and become very exhausting. Here is my final conclusion. Love God and obey his commandments, for this is the duty of man. For God will judge us for everything we do, including every hidden thing, good or bad. So, again, with that, to my ears, one of the main things I get out of this is I have said goodbye to people this past year. It has been a reminder for me that I am still alive. Even though, yes, I take my time to grieve and to mourn, that's part of the process, but the reminder that I'm still here. And how am I going to live life while I'm here, while I'm present? How am I going to share God's light with others? So, if you've listened this far, thank you. And I didn't say this at the top, but I'm just reading from the Living Bible that a dear friend of mine, actually, it's hers that I enjoy reading from. But if you don't have a Bible at home, you can also go online. I have a couple apps on my phone. So yes, you can even get Bible apps. I wanted to share that. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions about this episode or any of my other ones, please feel free to get a hold of me. My website is www.soulspirational.com. My email is info@soulspirational.com, info. So otherwise, until next time, thank you, be well, God bless, and namaste.